The void of hyperspace shimmered and fractured like a tear in the fabric of reality. And then a fleet of unfamiliar ships appeared, silhouetted against the distant glow of Coruscant's atmosphere. Jedi sensors picked up energy signatures unlike anything recorded in the Republic archives. The capital sky was suddenly filled with sleek, organic curves and angular hulls, glowing with pulsating blue lights. Republic ships scrambled to intercept, but the newcomers moved with an almost instinctive coordination that made every maneuver calculated and precise, evoking unease in the bridge crews watching from above. As the Jedi Council convened, the first wave of mass effect ships hovered above the city, their presence imposing yet strangely elegant. Their shields glimmered in patterns that seemed alive, rippling across their surfaces with an energy that the Jedi could sense but not fully understand. No hyperspace signature had preceded them. They had simply arrived, as though the galaxy had been rewritten to accommodate their existence. An Asari diplomat emerged first, her ship's hull radiating soft azure luminescence. She projected a message through a visual translator that was clear but unusual, a melodic tone underneath a language the Jedi had never heard. "We seek knowledge and cooperation," she said, her voice calm yet firm. Beside her, a Turian commander watched silently, his mandibles set with the discipline of a soldier whose life was built on duty and strategy. The Jedi considered the implications. These were not ordinary travelers or merchants. They were a fully organized, technologically advanced society capable of war, yet they approached with measured caution rather than immediate aggression. The council debated quietly but urgently. One member argued that the Mass Effect races were potential allies against the Sith, whose whispers in the shadows were always waiting. Another countered that any alien force not bound by the Force itself could bring catastrophe if left unchecked. Below, in the city streets, Republic civilians looked upward, eyes wide at the spectacle. Blaster fire lit up training simulators as soldiers and clones were placed on alert. The sky above reflected tension in both its unnatural color and the shadows of these alien ships. The Jedi dispatched envoys to establish contact. Jedi masters known for their diplomacy, Stila and Yoda's protege, boarded a sleek Republic cruiser and rose through Coruscant's atmosphere toward the alien formation. As they approached, energy fields shimmered, and a sense of resonance swept through the Force, unlike anything they had felt before. The biotic energy the aliens emitted carried both power and emotion, intertwining with the Force in ways that were difficult to define. On the bridge of the Asari flagship, the crew monitored the approaching Jedi with an understanding of the caution these beings required. Their ship's systems hummed in sync with their own nervous anticipation. Every sensor tracked movement, every screen displaying real-time analysis of Republic vessels. They had traveled through the rift expecting nothing, but instinct and protocol demanded careful observation. Tali, the young Quarian engineer, adjusted shields and weapon calibration, her hands moving with practiced efficiency. She studied the Republic ships with awe and careful calculation, noting the differences in energy output, hull density, and weapon technology. Commander Thane whispered instructions to the Asari pilot, who navigated with elegance that belied the tense situation. The first interaction was cautious. Jedi and Mass Effect envoys maneuvered closer, each party measuring the other. The Jedi projected calm authority, lightsabers at their sides, while the aliens demonstrated technological mastery and coordination. A Turian's voice resonated through comms, precise and commanding, explaining that their people sought a temporary station within the galactic capital, a place to observe and learn before any permanent decisions. A clone captain watched in disbelief. These beings had come from beyond the known galaxy, yet they behaved with discipline, reason, and a reluctance to provoke. It was an unfamiliar form of diplomacy, one that could not be ignored. Despite the initial calm, tension escalated within minutes. A Jedi tested a young Asari biotic, attempting a controlled force push. The reaction was instantaneous and overwhelming. Blue arcs of energy radiated outward, lifting clones, scattering droids, and knocking entire Republic sensors off balance. The Jedi barely restrained themselves, feeling the collision of the Force with biotic energy as a physical shock to the body and mind. On the Mass Effect side, engineers scrambled to recalibrate power matrices, surprised by the Force interference, but adapting rapidly. The Empire, monitoring from afar, detected the energy bursts and raised their alarm. Star destroyers were dispatched to investigate this anomaly, aware that the Republic might be dealing with an entirely unknown power. Above the city, a conversation between Jedi Masters highlighted the immediate concern. "These beings can manipulate energy as we manipulate the Force," said one. "But their method is alien, and we cannot fully sense their intentions. They are not Sith, they are not Jedi, and yet their power is undeniable." Another master added, "They are cautious, organized, and technologically superior. We must not act hastily, for any aggression could spark a war we are not ready to fight." On the flagship of the Mass Effect fleet, the Asari ambassador observed the Jedi with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Their abilities are unlike anything we anticipated," she said, "yet there is respect here. If they attack, they do so with hesitation. If we approach carefully, perhaps dialogue can prevent bloodshed." Communication attempts intensified. Hollow messages flickered across energy fields, with Asari, Turian, Krogan, and Salarian voices translating into basic and back. Jedi Masters sensed biotic fluctuations with each word, noting subtle emotional undertones embedded within their energy. The Mass Effect races had no Force connection, yet the resonance was similar, enough to cause instinctual reactions in Force-sensitive beings. This created a paradox. The Jedi could sense power, but its origin was not the Force itself. The Council debated whether to consider this a natural ally, a potential threat, or an entirely new phenomenon that required study before any judgments. In the corridors of the Republic's Central Command, clone officers received orders to maintain a defensive posture. Blaster units were positioned to protect civilians, and entire sectors were locked down to prevent panic. Streetlights cast long shadows over the crowd below as word spread. Ships from beyond the stars had arrived without warning. Panic and fascination intermingled, with some citizens applauding the idea of new allies, while others feared invasion. Street vendors and transport pilots whispered theories about alien alliances, hidden technology, and the potential for sudden war. News holos covered every angle, relaying images of the fleet above with captions that questioned the origin and intentions of these intruders. As the first exchanges continued, the Mass Effect fleet made a deliberate demonstration of their technological prowess. Shields shifted, biotic fields pulsed faintly outward, and energy weapons briefly illuminated the upper atmosphere. It was not a threat, but a clear message that these beings were not ordinary travelers, and that their survival depended on respect and caution from anyone who approached. Jedi Masters sensed the subtle negotiation embedded in their energy, confidence tempered with restraint. For the Republic, it was both a warning and a marvel, showing that the galaxy might be on the brink of a new era where power was no longer measured solely by the Force or fleets of star destroyers. Meanwhile, the Turian commander maintained a strict observation protocol, ensuring that their fleet remained coordinated while monitoring Republic and Jedi responses. Beside him, a Salarian scientist analyzed atmospheric conditions and energy readings, noting how different planets might affect their shields, propulsion, and biotic performance. Krogan soldiers, accustomed to planetary conquest and survival, displayed impatience with prolonged diplomacy but followed the chain of command, restrained only by the potential consequences of striking first. This internal balance of personalities and abilities reflected the complexity of the Mass Effect races, highlighting the diversity in philosophy and approach within a single fleet. Negotiations extended over hours, with both sides adjusting strategies. Jedi Masters debated sending additional envoys, while the Mass Effect ambassador proposed that small teams of each species conduct reconnaissance to better understand the culture and politics of the Star Wars galaxy. The Empire, now aware of these anomalies, repositioned assets discreetly to avoid public panic, while remaining ready to strike if hostility erupted. Sensors picked up biotic fluctuations, force surges, and energy fields that were alien to both sides. Every decision carried weight, for even a small misstep could escalate into galactic conflict. By the time Coruscant's twin suns began to set, the first tentative agreements were forming. Jedi would accompany Mass Effect representatives to observe the galaxy, while Mass Effect operatives would demonstrate restraint and protocol. Force-sensitive beings found themselves in awe of biotics, noting the similarity to their own powers, yet recognizing a key difference. Biotics could be channeled, manipulated, and amplified through technology, creating a new paradigm of power. Meanwhile, the Mass Effect races gained insight into the Force itself, learning that the galaxy operated under a principle that was both mystical and pervasive, yet bound by laws unfamiliar to them. Amidst this fragile truce, a sense of unease lingered. The presence of the Mass Effect races had disrupted the balance, drawing attention from multiple factions, both overt and hidden. Jedi and Republic strategists began mapping potential threat scenarios, while the Mass Effect fleet considered contingencies for betrayal or aggression. The streets of Coruscant were alive with speculation and tension, as civilians, soldiers, and travelers alike watched the unfolding event. This was the beginning of a new chapter in galactic history, one that promised conflict, cooperation, and the collision of civilizations on an unprecedented scale. The Asari diplomat, sensing the weight of this moment, transmitted a message of peace to the Jedi Council, emphasizing their intent to learn, observe, and integrate with caution. The Turian commander, however, prepared war plans should negotiation fail, his mind balancing diplomacy with tactical foresight. Krogan warriors trained silently, ready for combat but awaiting orders. On Coruscant, Jedi Masters sensed the potential for greatness or disaster. The galaxy had never encountered beings like these, and every heartbeat carried the possibility of history being rewritten. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. The Jedi Council convened in a tense session, their chambers dimly lit by the shifting glow of Coruscant's skyline. Each master's face reflected caution, curiosity, and unease as they analyzed the data streaming in from both the Mass Effect fleet and Republic intelligence channels. The Council knew they were dealing with an unprecedented situation. Beings whose abilities mirrored their own in some ways, yet were fundamentally different. The Force hummed with strange resonance, and the Masters sensed the biotics' potential for both cooperation and chaos. Several proposed that Jedi teams be dispatched immediately to engage the alien leaders in face-to-face dialogue, while others argued for surveillance and defensive preparations before risking miscommunication. Meanwhile, aboard the flagship of the Mass Effect fleet, the Asari diplomat held a private meeting with her Turian and Salarian advisors. The Republic's response is cautious but measured, she said, her hands brushing against the smooth surface of the conference table. They recognize our strength, but do not yet understand it. We must proceed carefully, or the balance could tip toward conflict. The Turian commander's mandibles tightened as he reviewed tactical readouts. Their fleets are sizable, but outdated compared to our technology. Their Jedi possess abilities that are unfamiliar, but limited. Engagement must be deliberate. We cannot underestimate them, but neither should we provoke unnecessary hostilities. The Salarian scientist adjusted his glasses and chimed in, "We need cultural intelligence. Understanding their political structures, the Force, and the Jedi Code is critical. Missteps could trigger a war before we even understand the rules of this galaxy." On Coruscant streets, citizens reacted to the unprecedented sight of alien ships hovering above the city. Clone troopers, stationed at checkpoints and transport hubs, watched the skies warily, their blasters ready. Civilians gathered in open plazas, their chatter a mixture of excitement and fear. Holo-news reports ran constantly, showing images of the Mass Effect ships, highlighting their unfamiliar architecture and glowing energy fields. The narrative of potential invasion and technological superiority spread quickly, leaving the city in a state of tense anticipation. Merchants shuttered windows and re-evaluated supply routes, while off-duty troopers speculated on the possibility of first contact gone wrong. The Jedi teams dispatched to meet the alien envoys traveled in specialized cruisers, their routes carefully calculated to avoid mass panic. On board, Masters discussed strategy and protocol. "Keep the focus on diplomacy," said one. "We cannot afford an accidental strike or show of aggression. Their technology may not harm us directly, but their understanding of it could be catastrophic if misused." Another added, "We must remain calm, measured, and observant. This is not a confrontation yet, but it could become one quickly if we misinterpret intent." Lightsabers were holstered, but the Masters remained ready. They sensed the biotic energy before visual contact, a subtle yet undeniable echo that suggested power equal in intensity, if not in nature, to the Force. The initial meeting took place in orbit above Coruscant, in a specially designated neutral zone. The Mass Effect fleet had lowered shields to a minimum, a gesture of trust, yet still maintaining defensive readiness. The Jedi cruisers approached slowly, and the Asari envoy greeted them through the visual communicator, her image crisp and serene. "We come with respect for your galaxy and the traditions we are just beginning to understand," she said. "Our people wish to observe and learn, not dominate or conquer. Cooperation is our priority." The Turian commander added, "We have means to defend ourselves. Aggression will not be tolerated. Consider this an opportunity to understand us, rather than fear us." Despite the calm words, the potential for misunderstanding remained high. Jedi Masters extended their senses through the Force, probing the biotic energy and reading subtle fluctuations in intent. They discovered that the Mass Effect species possessed both individual discipline and coordinated group strategy, a combination that amplified their effectiveness in ways unfamiliar to the Jedi. Every movement, every adjustment of shields, and every minor manipulation of biotic fields had consequences that resonated unpredictably through the Force. One master whispered to another, "Their energy flows like the Force, but it is not the Force. We must be cautious, for we cannot fully anticipate the outcomes of even minor engagements." On board the flagship, Krogan leaders grew restless. Their instincts favored action over diplomacy, and several warriors questioned the slow pace of communication. "We have survived worse than uncertainty," one growled. "But we cannot remain idle while others dictate our movements." The Asari diplomat, recognizing the simmering impatience, reminded them that demonstrating restraint now would secure their credibility with the Jedi and the Republic. "We are not here to conquer," she said firmly. "We are here to observe, learn, and establish relationships that will protect our people. We must act wisely, not impulsively." Meanwhile, in the shadows, the Empire observed these events with keen interest. Star destroyers patrolled silently above Coruscant, their presence unnoticed by the city below. Imperial officers debated the appropriate response, weighing the possibility of exploiting the Mass Effect race's technology against the risk of provoking a conflict they could not control. "They are advanced, but we are not powerless," one officer said. "We can study them, understand their technology, and use their arrival to consolidate our influence." Another countered, "We cannot assume they will be compliant. Their actions could destabilize entire systems if mishandled." The first attempts at joint cultural exchanges began with careful observation. Asari and Salarian researchers recorded Jedi forms, studying lightsaber techniques, telekinesis, and subtle applications of the Force. Jedi Masters, in turn, observed the Mass Effect race's biotics, shield technology, and starship coordination. These exchanges were cautious, tentative, and laden with tension. Each side recognized the potential for both cooperation and catastrophic error. Jedi and Mass Effect envoys practiced restraint, knowing that any misstep could lead to a war neither side desired. As hours turned into days, the Jedi began to understand the functional similarities and key differences between the Force and biotic abilities. A young Asari female demonstrated a controlled lift of a small Republic transport using biotics, her concentration precise. Jedi Masters were simultaneously impressed and wary. While the energy flow resembled telekinesis. It lacked the moral and mystical dimensions inherent to the Force. The biotic manipulation could move massive objects, deflect energy blasts, or displace multiple opponents in a single motion. Yet it did not respond to meditation, moral intent, or the subtle currents of the galaxy in the way the Force did. Meanwhile, the Turian commander began establishing protocols for engagement with local planetary governments. Small landing parties were sent to outer rim worlds, observing populations, resources, and political structures. Jedi liaisons accompanied these expeditions to provide guidance and ensure no inadvertent violations of local laws. Salarians conducted covert surveillance, analyzing potential threats or opportunities. Krogan scouts tested planetary conditions, noting defensive potential, natural hazards, and locations suitable for training or staging operations. The diversity of approaches reflected the individual strengths and philosophies of the Mass Effect races. Despite the careful planning, tensions flared when a minor miscommunication occurred between a Jedi envoy and a Krogan patrol. The Krogan misinterpreted a warning as an act of hostility, leading to a brief skirmish with kinetic discharges and biotic ripples destabilizing nearby structures. Both sides quickly de-escalated, but the incident underscored the precarious nature of these first interactions. Jedi Masters emphasized calm and diplomacy, while the Asari diplomat reiterated the importance of communication and restraint. Each action sends a ripple through multiple layers of this galaxy, she said. We must move with awareness and precision, or we risk consequences beyond our comprehension. By the conclusion of this initial phase, both Jedi and Mass Effect representatives had achieved a fragile understanding. They recognized that while their abilities and philosophies differed, cooperation offered the potential for stability and mutual protection. Yet the shadow of the Empire loomed, and reports of imperial interest reminded both parties that trust would be tested. The galaxy had been fundamentally altered, and every participant, Force-sensitive or not, knew that the arrival of the Mass Effect races had introduced variables that could not be ignored. Negotiations, observation, and cautious exploration became the new norm. Jedi learned to measure biotic energy as a distinct force that could affect outcomes without moral alignment, while the Mass Effect races adapted to the presence of the Force, realizing that the galaxy operated under principles that did not exist in their home universe. The first seeds of collaboration, competition, and cultural exchange had been sown, setting the stage for political intrigue, moral dilemmas, and galactic-scale conflicts that would follow. The collision of the Force and biotics became impossible to ignore as initial diplomacy gave way to practical demonstrations of power. On a remote orbital platform above the planet Ryloth, Jedi Masters gathered alongside Mass Effect representatives to observe a controlled test of biotic abilities in a neutral environment. The Asari lifted massive stone blocks with precision, while Turians coordinated to manipulate shields and generate energy barriers, testing both defensive and offensive capacities. Jedi watched closely, sensing the biotic fields through the Force. The resonance was unlike anything they had previously encountered, powerful yet distinct from the light side. The Masters debated whether this energy could be channeled, influenced, or even opposed using Force techniques. One remarked, "It is as if the Force itself has been split, refracted through another universe's laws. We must proceed with caution. Its potential is vast and unpredictable." Meanwhile, tensions simmered within the Mass Effect fleet. Krogan warriors, impatient with measured diplomacy, pressed for training exercises that could also serve as combat simulations, testing how biotics might operate under real-world conditions. The Asari diplomat mediated, emphasizing restraint, observation, and ethical responsibility. "We demonstrate strength," she said, "but not recklessness. The galaxy we enter is governed by rules we do not yet fully understand. Our presence alone is disruptive enough." Turians documented every variable, from gravitational fluctuations to energy field interactions with atmospheric composition, while Salarians computed projections to predict Force influence on biotic energy. These meticulous preparations reflected the race's combined pragmatism and caution, a calculated approach to what could otherwise become chaos. Despite careful planning, the first real conflict arose when a Jedi Knight tested his lightsaber technique against biotic shielding. Using a controlled force push to simulate an offensive, he struck against a Turian energy barrier, expecting minimal resistance. Instead, the biotic field reacted in unexpected ways, amplifying the impact and creating a small shockwave that rattled nearby structures. Clone troopers on standby shouted in alarm, their comms crackling as energy ripples bounced unpredictably through the platform. Jedi quickly intervened to restrain further escalation, but the incident revealed the unpredictable synergy between force and biotic energy. Masters debated whether such interactions could be weaponized or if they posed a systemic risk to the galaxy's stability. In orbit above Coruscant, the Empire noted these developments with growing concern. Imperial officers argued over the appropriate course of action. Some advocated a cautious approach, suggesting surveillance and intelligence gathering before intervention. Others recommended an immediate strike, believing the Mass Effect race's capabilities could challenge Imperial supremacy if left unchecked. Star destroyers were placed on alert, but their movement was discreet, avoiding public panic. Meanwhile, Imperial spies on Coruscant gathered information from Republic channels, piecing together the capabilities and intentions of these aliens. Every report emphasized the same themes: biotic power, advanced technology, strategic discipline, and potential threat. The moral complexity of the situation became apparent as the Mass Effect races interacted with local populations. On Ryloth, an Asari envoy intervened in a dispute between local colonists and a minor gang, using subtle biotic manipulation to de-escalate the situation without causing harm. Jedi observed, noting that while the Force emphasized restraint and moral clarity, biotics offered an equally effective but mechanically different method of influence. In another sector, a Krogan patrol misinterpreted minor resistance from smugglers as aggression, resulting in a brief skirmish. The Asari immediately intervened, highlighting the tension between instinctive action and ethical decision-making. Jedi Masters realized that these aliens operated under principles aligned with strategic pragmatism, while the Force demanded moral discernment, creating a layered complexity in potential alliances. Communication between factions became increasingly delicate. Jedi envoys worked to understand the Mass Effect cultural framework, emphasizing honor, cooperation, and ethical responsibility, while learning to distinguish between biotic skill and moral intent. Turians and Salarians analyzed Force sensitivity, attempting to predict how these energies could be influenced, but consistently found that biotics were resistant to external manipulation beyond physical interactions. This reinforced the idea that the Mass Effect races would remain autonomous, forcing Jedi to adapt their diplomatic strategies. The Empire continued monitoring, calculating the potential for both cooperation and exploitation, while rebels and syndicates speculated on how such a force could shift galactic power balances. The first joint training exercise brought the differences into stark relief. Jedi tested lightsaber duels against biotic resistance fields, while Mass Effect operatives simulated combat scenarios against clone trooper contingents enhanced with Force-assisted reflexes. The results were unpredictable. In some cases, biotics overpowered the Jedi's anticipation, pushing them to adapt on the fly. In others, Force techniques disrupted biotic fields in ways that surprised the aliens. Observers from both sides realized that mutual understanding was essential. Neither technology nor mystical ability alone could dominate the encounter. Tactical simulations became prolonged, collaborative experiments rather than confrontations, establishing a baseline for mutual respect. Despite these control tests, tensions escalated when a Sith Lord sensed the potential of biotic energy from a distance. Drawn by the resonance that mimicked the dark side, he dispatched agents to investigate. These operatives approached with caution, testing both Mass Effect shields and biotic defenses. Minor skirmishes ensued as Sith infiltration teams clashed with defensive squads of Turians and Krogans. The Mass Effect races demonstrated impressive adaptability, integrating strategic analysis with raw strength. Jedi intervened, mediating the conflict and emphasizing the importance of restraint and the consequences of escalating into a wider confrontation. Both Mass Effect and Star Wars forces recognized the fragility of their initial arrangements, realizing that even minor misunderstandings could escalate quickly. On Coruscant, civilians reacted with a mixture of awe and fear as news of the biotic force interaction spread. HoloNews reports highlighted energy surges visible in the atmosphere, displaying flashes of blue and purple arcs across orbital platforms and cityscapes. Citizens speculated on whether these aliens were allies, invaders, or a new kind of threat. The Republic dispatched additional diplomats and security forces to maintain public order, while Jedi Masters continued observations, sensing subtle ripples of intention and emotion emanating from the biotic users. Every encounter carried the weight of possibility. Diplomacy, cooperation, and devastating conflict were all within reach. During these exchanges, the Mass Effect races demonstrated adaptability beyond expectation. Biotics were used not only in combat scenarios, but also for problem-solving, lifting debris after accidental platform collapses, reinforcing structural weaknesses, and stabilizing energy flows. Jedi Masters noted that while the mechanics differed, the principle of energy manipulation aligned in intent. Ethical application of power became a central point of discussion, particularly in how biotics could complement or challenge the Jedi's approach to maintaining peace and stability. Tactical simulations shifted from tests of raw power to experiments in ethics, strategy, and interspecies coordination. The initial encounter between Force-sensitive Jedi and biotic users on Ryloth became emblematic of the galaxy's new complexity. Mass Effect operatives adapted their techniques to account for the unpredictable influence of the Force, while Jedi incorporated awareness of biotic feedback into their training protocols. The Empire continued watching, calculating the potential for future intervention. Local governments began to request guidance and protection, leading to a delicate balancing act where diplomacy, technology, and mystical energy interwove. Every decision carried potential consequences, making each interaction a test of skill, patience, and foresight. By the end of these early weeks, both the Mass Effect fleet and the Jedi had begun forming a framework for cooperation. Mutual understanding was still fragile, and every exchange carried risk, yet the promise of collaboration had taken root. The galaxy itself had been altered. The laws, rules, and expectations that had governed life under the Force were now intersecting with a new kind of power, one shaped by technology, biotics, and strategy. The stage was set for larger conflicts, ethical dilemmas, and the emergence of alliances that would redefine the balance of power across star systems. The Empire could no longer remain passive, as reports of biotic and Jedi interactions reached the upper echelons of the command hierarchy. Imperial officers convened aboard a star destroyer orbiting Coruscant, their shadows cast long by the red glow of the viewport. Fleet Admiral Thrax paced the chamber, fingers steepled as he studied the tactical readouts. "These newcomers are not merely technologically advanced," he said, voice sharp. "They exhibit abilities that our intelligence cannot fully quantify. If left unchecked, they could destabilize not only our hold on the outer rim, but potentially the entire galaxy." Generals and strategists debated options, from espionage and observation to direct intervention. Several advocated for cautious engagement, emphasizing that their superior numbers and firepower could dominate any alien fleet. Others warned that underestimating biotic capability could lead to catastrophic losses. The discussion revealed a rare fracture in Imperial consensus. While fear of the unknown was universal, strategy diverged sharply between those favoring diplomacy and those advocating decisive action. Meanwhile, aboard the Mass Effect flagship, the Asari diplomat received an urgent report from a Salarian intelligence agent. "Imperial vessels have moved into a holding pattern near Coruscant orbit," the Salarian said, voice clipped and precise. "Scans indicate advanced weapons deployment, energy-dampening fields, and preparations for engagement. They are observing, but the Empire does not merely watch. It tests and evaluates. Any misstep could provoke them." The Asari nodded, her gaze narrowing. We must maintain the initiative. Our presence is disruptive by default. If we act with transparency and controlled demonstration, we can minimize the risk of confrontation. Aggression now would be catastrophic. The Turian commander, mandibles twitching, added, "We need to show capability without provoking fear. Controlled drills, demonstration of restraint, and careful communication will be essential." To test these principles, the Mass Effect races initiated a controlled orbital exercise, simulating defense of a civilian transport while maintaining minimal aggression. Jedi observers participated, providing feedback on both tactical execution and ethical judgment. Biotics lifted massive debris, redirected energy streams, and demonstrated coordinated fleet maneuvers, all without harming unarmed personnel. Jedi Masters were impressed by the efficiency and discipline of the combined operations, yet remained wary of the implications. "They are capable of forceful intervention without moral compunction," one master remarked. "We must ensure that such power is guided by principles compatible with this galaxy, or unintended consequences will follow." Imperial reconnaissance detected the operation immediately. Sensors recorded energy discharges, biotic ripples, and unusual shield interactions. Officers aboard the Star Destroyer debated the severity of the situation. "These abilities are not inherently destructive," a tactical officer noted, "but they could undermine our supremacy if replicated or countered improperly. Any engagement must be calculated and precise, or the risk extends beyond a single skirmish." Thrax considered this carefully, realizing that the Empire's typical methods of intimidation and overwhelming force might not achieve the desired effect. The Empire's technological superiority, though vast, might be challenged by the adaptability and unpredictability of biotics when combined with disciplined military strategy. Meanwhile, political currents shifted on Coruscant. Senators and planetary governors grew anxious over reports of alien powers within close orbit. Debates erupted over whether to negotiate, contain, or forcibly remove the newcomers. Some feared that the Mass Effect races could become a new faction, wielding technology and biotic power to influence interstellar politics. Others argued that cooperation offered the Republic access to unprecedented advancements in defense and diplomacy. Jedi envoys cautioned restraint, emphasizing that hasty decisions could escalate minor tensions into full-scale war. Public sentiment was similarly divided. Civilians oscillated between curiosity, awe, and fear, while clone troopers were reassigned to maintain order during increasingly tense demonstrations. The first confrontation was triggered when an Imperial reconnaissance squadron attempted to probe the outer perimeter of the Mass Effect fleet. Turian sentries detected the movement immediately, and the Krogan response was swift but measured. Energy shields flared, biotics formed barriers, and the squadron was repelled without casualties. Jedi Masters, observing via remote channels, noted the precision and restraint displayed by the aliens. The incident underscored the potential for escalation and revealed the Empire's willingness to test boundaries. Messages were sent between the Mass Effect and Imperial commands, carefully crafted to assert capability without inviting full-scale conflict. Despite the diplomatic exchange, tensions escalated further when a Sith Inquisitor sensed the biotic presence as a resonance akin to the dark side. Driven by curiosity and ambition, he dispatched a covert team to infiltrate the Mass Effect flagship. The infiltrators encountered immediate resistance. Krogan warriors engaged aggressively, biotics flaring to repel intruders, while Turians coordinated defensive patterns with strategic precision. Jedi monitoring the situation intervened indirectly, using subtle force guidance to prevent bloodshed while allowing the aliens to demonstrate their defensive competence. The encounter highlighted not only the unpredictable dynamics of this crossover, but also the moral complexity each faction faced, restraining power without appearing weak, and defending sovereignty without escalating hostility. Simultaneously, Asari diplomats sought to bridge understanding with local political representatives. On Coruscant, meetings were arranged between planetary governors, Jedi advisors, and Mass Effect delegates to communicate intent and establish guidelines for engagement. The discussions emphasized ethical application of biotics, non-interference with internal affairs, and transparency in military exercises. This approach contrasted sharply with the Empire's covert testing, highlighting the tension between strategic caution and authoritarian pragmatism. Jedi Masters observed these efforts, appreciating the alignment with principles of restraint and morality inherent in the light side, yet they remained vigilant against manipulation or unintended consequences. Conflict simulations continued in controlled zones, blending the strategic acumen of Mass Effect forces with the Jedi's anticipatory skills. Biotic ripples were measured against force projections, showing both the power and unpredictability inherent in the interaction. Clone troopers were incorporated to act as neutral observers, providing data on outcomes without bias. The simulations emphasized coordination, communication, and adaptation, demonstrating that neither raw power nor mystical ability alone could dominate. Both factions were forced to reconcile their philosophies and methods, resulting in lessons that would inform future engagements with the Empire or other potential threats. In the shadows, Imperial intelligence prepared contingency plans. Analysts projected scenarios ranging from negotiation to full-scale assault, taking into account biotic and Jedi synergy, fleet capabilities, and planetary logistics. Thrax recognized that preemptive aggression could ignite a multi-faction conflict, potentially destabilizing systems under Imperial control. Conversely, delayed action risked allowing the Mass Effect races to expand influence and establish permanent footholds. Strategic planning became a delicate balance of observation, projection, and risk mitigation. Every decision carried consequences not only for the Empire, but also for the wider galactic order. By the end of this period, the galaxy's balance had shifted subtly but decisively. The Mass Effect races demonstrated discipline, ethical restraint, and advanced capabilities, while Jedi Masters gained unprecedented insight into a new form of energy manipulation. The Empire was forced to reconsider traditional assumptions of dominance, recognizing that unknown variables could disrupt even the most carefully maintained control. Civilian populations were aware of a new power on the horizon, their curiosity and fear shaping public opinion and political pressure. The stage was set for the next phase, where philosophical, technological, and moral boundaries would collide, forcing all parties to adapt, choose, and respond in ways that would define the galaxy's future. The subtle tension between diplomacy and latent conflict intensified as the Mass Effect races began establishing forward observation posts on several Outer Rim worlds. Jedi Masters accompanied select missions, providing guidance on force-sensitive reconnaissance and planetary security protocols. Turians coordinated patrols with clone units, integrating biotic shields and advanced tactics to minimize civilian risk, while gathering intelligence on environmental variables and local populations. Krogan warriors conducted training exercises, testing their strength, resilience, and ability to adapt to the unique gravitational and atmospheric conditions of these remote planets. Meanwhile, Asari diplomats established communications with local governments, carefully negotiating treaties that emphasized non-aggression, transparency, and the potential for technological collaboration. Each mission balanced caution with demonstration of capability, a delicate dance between projecting power and avoiding provocation. Despite careful planning, the first serious misunderstanding occurred on a mining colony near the Twi'lek sectors. A group of miners had inadvertently triggered a biotic response while repairing mining equipment that emitted electromagnetic interference. The resulting ripple temporarily disabled several energy shields and sent nearby equipment flying. Clone troopers were caught in the shockwave, though no casualties occurred. Jedi Masters intervened, calming both humans and aliens, while Turian and Salarian analysts quickly assessed the incident. This is a demonstration of the inherent unpredictability of biotic interaction with foreign technology, the Asari diplomat said. It is vital we adjust our operational protocols to prevent escalation in inhabited areas. The galaxy cannot tolerate even minor accidents of this scale. Meanwhile, Imperial forces quietly tested their understanding of biotics. An elite Star Destroyer squadron attempted an observational strike to measure the response of biotic shields under fire. Krogan units and Turian defense teams reacted instantly, deploying biotic barriers and countermeasures that not only protected assets, but also created feedback loops affecting the squadron's targeting systems. Jedi Masters observed the interactions and reported that the Mass Effect race's defensive capabilities were sophisticated enough to neutralize potential threats without unnecessary destruction. Imperial officers analyzed the results with growing concern, realizing that conventional strategies might prove insufficient. The Empire's technological advantage could be mitigated if biotics and force-trained opponents combined tactical acumen with adaptive energy manipulation. On the political front, the Republic grappled with the implications of these new arrivals. Senators debated the legal and ethical considerations of granting the Mass Effect races limited autonomy, advanced resources, and access to strategic information. Some argue that cooperation could accelerate scientific development and bolster defense capabilities against external threats, including Imperial influence. Others feared that sharing knowledge with beings unbound by traditional galactic law risked creating a power imbalance too complex to control. Jedi Masters cautioned restraint, emphasizing that political considerations must be balanced with ethical responsibility and the long-term stability of the galaxy. The first joint operation demonstrating cooperation took place on a contested system where Separatist remnants had established hidden supply depots. Mass Effect fleets, utilizing precise biotic maneuvers, disabled defensive installations while maintaining minimal collateral damage. Jedi Masters guided clone troopers through force-assisted reconnaissance, providing tactical foresight and ensuring that civilian populations remained unharmed. The combination of biotic power and force prescience proved extraordinarily effective, neutralizing threats with efficiency unparalleled by either group alone. Observers noted that such collaboration could redefine conflict resolution in the galaxy, if managed carefully. However, not all outcomes were predictable. During the operation, a Krogan squad encountered a malfunctioning Separatist droid that emitted an electromagnetic pulse, destabilizing biotic shields temporarily. The Jedi immediately intervened with force stabilization, preventing serious injury or damage. The incident highlighted the delicate interplay between alien technology and force-sensitive intervention, revealing vulnerabilities that could be exploited if the knowledge fell into the wrong hands. Tactical analysts from both sides revised strategies to include contingency measures, training programs, and enhanced communication protocols to address unforeseen variables in high-stakes operations. Amid these activities, the Empire increased its clandestine observation. Inquisitors conducted reconnaissance on the Mass Effect fleet, attempting to measure biotic energy against the dark side. The results were inconsistent. Biotic energy resonated unpredictably, sometimes amplifying the Sith's force manipulation, other times resisting it entirely. These anomalies prompted heated debates among Imperial strategists regarding potential exploitation or containment strategies. One officer warned, "We must proceed with extreme caution." The biotic's potential to disrupt both Jedi and Imperial operations is significant. Underestimating them could result in destabilization beyond our control. Others advocated preemptive strikes to neutralize the perceived threat, citing historical precedents for eliminating unknown forces before they became influential. As diplomatic, tactical, and exploratory operations unfolded, the Mass Effect races demonstrated remarkable adaptability. Biotic users adjusted to force disturbances and gravitational anomalies, integrating Jedi insights into their operational strategies. Turian squads refined combat formations to account for force precognition, while Krogan units leveraged environmental features, biotic enhancements, and sheer strength in concerted maneuvers. Asari and Salarian diplomats coordinated communication, ensuring transparency with local governments and Jedi authorities, while also advocating for independence in decision-making to maintain operational effectiveness. These adaptations underscored the race's ability to thrive in a galaxy governed by laws, forces, and traditions foreign to their own. Civilian reactions across the Republic were mixed. Reports of biotic demonstrations, defensive exercises, and controlled planetary operations inspired awe among some populations while instilling fear in others. Merchants, scientists, and explorers eagerly sought interaction with the newcomers, while conservative factions called for containment and oversight. Jedi Masters observed the social dynamics closely, noting that the integration of the Mass Effect races introduced not only technological and mystical complexity, but also a socio-political element that could influence governance, trade, and interstellar relations for generations. By the end of these coordinated exercises, several key lessons emerged. Biotic energy, while powerful and precise, required contextual awareness and integration with local environmental and technological factors. Jedi training in anticipation, ethics, and strategy provided critical complements to biotic capability, enhancing overall effectiveness while preventing unnecessary escalation. Imperial observers acknowledged the potential for significant disruption if mismanaged, prompting long-term strategic planning and contingency development. Civilian populations had begun to adapt to the presence of these alien races, reshaping public perception, expectations, and political pressure. The stage was set for the next phase of engagement, where philosophical differences, tactical ingenuity, and the inherent unpredictability of both force and biotic energy would collide in increasingly complex ways, forcing all factions to adapt rapidly or risk catastrophic consequences. The uneasy equilibrium established between the Mass Effect races and the galactic factions was shattered when an unexpected signal emanated from deep within the unknown regions. A beacon, pulsing with both biotic resonance and a faint but unmistakable force signature, drew the attention of Jedi reconnaissance teams and Turian analysts alike. The signal appeared on multiple sensor arrays simultaneously, suggesting a phenomenon that defied conventional understanding. Jedi Masters theorized that it might represent a convergence of force-sensitive energy with biotic amplification, a unique event unprecedented in galactic history. Meanwhile, the Turian High Command interpreted the readings as a potential threat capable of overwhelming conventional defenses, prompting an immediate mobilization of observation fleets. The Krogan, ever eager for confrontation, readied strike teams, curious whether this anomaly could be tested against their strength and resilience. Ahsoka Tano, now acclimating to her new environment, felt an instinctual pull toward the signal, a sensation she had only experienced when the Force itself whispered warnings or opportunities. Her dual lightsabers hummed faintly in response, a subtle attunement to the energy that resonated not only in the galaxy but across dimensions. She consulted with Asari envoys and Salarian analysts, who marveled at her ability to interface with the biotic resonance without technological augmentation. "This is unprecedented," one Salarian researcher noted. "Her connection to the Force seems to act as a catalyst, enhancing our ability to detect and interpret this energy. It is both dangerous and invaluable." Ahsoka understood that this was no simple reconnaissance mission. The convergence had the potential to alter galactic balance, testing not only her combat skills, but her understanding of diplomacy, morality, and the unpredictable interplay of powers. The first investigative team, a joint force of Turians, Krogan, and Jedi, approached the beacon source in a heavily modified stealth frigate designed to operate under extreme sensor interference. The environment itself challenged both biotic and force-sensitive participants. Gravity fluctuated sporadically, atmospheric composition shifted in irregular cycles, and electromagnetic disturbances intermittently disabled communications and sensors. Biotic shields fluctuated, requiring constant adjustment by Turian and Krogan operators, while Jedi Masters relied on Force intuition to anticipate environmental hazards and guide team movements. Every maneuver demanded coordination, agility, and rapid adaptability. Ahsoka led the way through tight corridors of crystalline structures that seemed to resonate with both biotic and Force energy, her movements precise, her awareness heightened by a combination of instinct and training. The source of the signal revealed itself as a dormant structure, partially buried beneath jagged rock formations. Its architecture was alien, yet strangely familiar to both biotic and Force-sensitive participants. Glyphs etched into the walls pulsed faintly, seemingly responding to both force and biotic energy. Turian engineers speculated that the facility had once been a hub of interstellar research, perhaps abandoned during a previous era of conflict. Jedi Masters cautioned that the glyphs might serve as protective wards, designed to prevent unauthorized access. Ahsoka, sensing a profound intelligence embedded within the structure, decided to proceed cautiously, channeling both her connection to the Force and her understanding of the environment to navigate safely. Her lightsabers illuminated pathways while simultaneously deflecting sporadic energy discharges from the glyphs. As the team delved deeper, a defensive mechanism activated. Biotic shockwaves erupted from the walls, coinciding with a pulse that disrupted force-based perception. Krogan warriors braced against the shocks, Turian shields absorbed and redirected bursts, and Jedi leaped and twirled to avoid destabilizing feedback loops. Ahsoka's reflexes proved critical. She deflected energy spikes with her blades while using the Force to stabilize teammates in midair, ensuring that no one was struck fatally. The encounter demonstrated not only the complexity of the structure's defenses, but also the unprecedented synergy possible when biotics and Force-sensitive skill were combined. Turian analysts recorded the patterns meticulously, while Jedi Masters adapted their approach in real time, creating a dynamic feedback loop of strategy and intuition. Inside the core chamber, the source of the signal revealed a crystalline artifact, suspended above a pedestal and pulsating with alternating biotic and Force energy. Its hum resonated through the entire structure, creating subtle vibrations that interfered with conventional communication and sensory equipment. Ahsoka stepped forward, feeling a connection that transcended her understanding of either universe. "This isn't just a beacon," she said. "It's a bridge, or perhaps a test." The Asari and Salarian scientists examined the artifact with sophisticated instruments, confirming that it contained energy signatures far beyond anything cataloged in their records. "The implications are immense," an Asari diplomat whispered. "If this artifact is activated or misused, it could destabilize entire sectors, or worse, entire systems." While the scientific team debated methodology, Imperial observers had managed to track the operation from afar, coordinating with covert operatives who infiltrated the perimeter. The Empire's interest in controlling such a device was immediate, as strategic analysts calculated the potential for leveraging its energy in war efforts. Simultaneously, the Republic and Allied Mass Effect forces understood that the artifact could serve as a bridge for communication, exploration, or even interdimensional travel, offering advantages if safeguarded responsibly. The tension was palpable. Every faction recognized the artifact's immense power, yet no consensus existed regarding its ethical use, operational protocols, or the potential for unintended consequences. Ahsoka realized that a delicate moral choice was imminent. Activating the artifact could provide invaluable knowledge, but might inadvertently harm nearby star systems, or destabilize the already fragile alliances forming between the Mass Effect races and Star Wars factions. Choosing not to act could allow the Empire or rogue elements to seize it, potentially using its energy for conquest or annihilation. She conferred briefly with Asari diplomats and Turian strategists, weighing options carefully. "We must proceed with caution," she said. "This isn't a weapon to wield recklessly. It's a test of our judgment, our restraint, and our ability to work together. Missteps could be catastrophic." The team devised a controlled approach. Jedi Masters used the Force to map the artifact's energy flow, predicting feedback loops and identifying critical points where biotic interference could safely interact. Turian and Krogan operators implemented physical stabilization measures, while Asari and Salarian scientists coordinated delicate manipulations of the crystal matrix. Ahsoka positioned herself at the center, channeling both Force sensitivity and combat reflexes, ready to counter unpredictable energy surges. The operation required precise timing, trust, and discipline. Any misalignment could result in catastrophic energy feedback capable of destroying the structure and injuring everyone present. After tense minutes that felt like hours, the artifact responded to their coordinated approach. Pulses of energy stabilized, revealing faint holographic projections of star charts, unknown civilizations, and energy vectors intersecting across multiple sectors. The hologram suggested a network far more complex than any known hyperlane or hyperspace map, implying that the artifact could serve as a gateway for exploration, intelligence gathering, and potentially interdimensional travel. The team exchanged glances. The implications were staggering. Jedi Masters interpreted the artifact as a potential tool to deepen understanding of the Force across vast regions, while Mass Effect analysts considered the potential for interstellar navigation and technological advancement. Imperial operatives, attempting a covert approach, triggered a defensive response. Energy pulses surged outward, forcing them into retreat and inadvertently exposing the full potential of the artifact's security mechanisms. Ahsoka acted decisively, using her lightsabers and the Force to neutralize hazards, demonstrating the critical value of her skills in both combat and protective strategy. The incident underscored a central lesson. Knowledge and power were inseparable from responsibility. Each faction now faced a choice: cooperate under strict ethical oversight or risk destabilizing forces vying for control. In the aftermath, the Jedi, Mass Effect races, and cautious Republic representatives established a temporary oversight council, agreeing to study the artifact collaboratively while maintaining strict security measures. The artifact's potential, while immense, also revealed the delicate balance required to integrate the Mass Effect races responsibly into the Galactic Order. Ahsoka remained vigilant, aware that each step forward would be scrutinized by multiple factions, each with its own agenda, while the artifact's energy continued to pulse faintly, as if awaiting the next act in a story that had only just begun. The discovery of the crystalline artifact sent shockwaves through multiple galactic factions, forcing Jedi, Mass Effect races, and the Empire to re-evaluate their priorities. Jedi Masters debated the proper ethical approach, arguing that any premature interaction could have irreversible consequences. The Council emphasized that the artifact represented not just knowledge, but also immense responsibility, a tool that could either unify or fracture the galaxy depending on how it was approached. Ahsoka Tano, drawing on her experiences in the Clone Wars and her instinctive understanding of moral consequence, felt the weight of leadership resting on her shoulders. The Mass Effect delegates looked to her for guidance, their reliance on her judgment highlighting the intersection of Force insight and biotic strategy. The Asari, Turians, and Krogan all recognized that she was uniquely capable of mediating between factions while preventing rash decisions that could escalate conflict. Imperial observers were not idle. The Sith Inquisitor assigned to monitor the operation felt the artifact's energy resonating dangerously close to the dark side, an allure that beckoned with promise and subtle menace. He understood that controlling such a device could cement his influence over both Force-sensitive beings and technologically advanced alien races. Covert strikes were planned to infiltrate the Council's operation, but the unpredictability of biotic interference made timing and coordination precarious. Imperial intelligence officers calculated potential outcomes, noting that the artifact could amplify Force and biotic energy in ways that could neutralize even elite Imperial units. The Sith's ambition collided with the strategic caution of his superiors, creating tension within the Empire's chain of command. Meanwhile, the Mass Effect races began internal debates about how to interact with the artifact. Krogan warriors, ever drawn to power and the challenge of mastering formidable forces, advocated for direct interaction and testing, eager to assert dominance and gain first-hand experience. Turians argued for disciplined study, carefully analyzing energy patterns before risking exposure. Asari emphasized diplomacy and ethical oversight, warning that misuse could provoke interstellar conflict or destabilize sectors entirely. Salarian intelligence operatives focused on gathering data without direct interference, calculating probabilities, and projecting long-term outcomes. Ahsoka facilitated discussions, her perspective bridging the philosophical and tactical, ensuring that decisions reflected both responsibility and practicality. The first major test of the artifact's potential occurred when a group of biotic users attempted controlled energy manipulation under Jedi supervision. The initial results were both impressive and alarming. Biotic fields expanded beyond anticipated boundaries, interacting with the Force in unpredictable ways. Lightsaber blades hummed with resonance, deflecting stray energy surges, while clone troopers relied on rapid coordination to prevent accidental damage. The interaction demonstrated that Force and biotic energy could coexist and even enhance one another, but it also revealed potential instability. A minor misalignment could create localized gravitational distortions, energy feedback loops, or temporary temporal fluctuations. Jedi Masters quickly established containment protocols, while Asari and Turian scientists logged every variable for further study. Civilian populations across nearby systems monitored these developments with growing fascination and concern. News broadcasts depicted controlled demonstrations of energy manipulation, blending Jedi agility and biotic power. Civilians were captivated, but whispers of potential danger spread, prompting local governors to request oversight and protective measures. Trade routes were temporarily rerouted to minimize exposure to any energy fluctuations, and planetary defense forces increased alert levels. The situation highlighted the profound societal impact of the Mass Effect race's arrival, demonstrating that their integration into the galaxy extended beyond military and diplomatic considerations. Cultural adaptation, public perception, and political influence became as critical as tactical mastery of new abilities. The Empire, increasingly frustrated with the careful deliberation of Jedi and Mass Effect delegates, attempted a limited intervention. An Imperial Star Destroyer approached the vicinity of the artifact under the guise of a scientific mission, but sensors detected anomalous energy feedback. Turian and Krogan forces responded immediately, creating biotic barriers and strategic defense grids. Ahsoka coordinated defensive maneuvers, using Force precognition to anticipate Imperial firing patterns and minimize risk to civilians and allied personnel. The confrontation, though brief and without casualties, sent a clear message. Any aggressive approach could trigger unpredictable consequences, potentially escalating into large-scale conflict. Imperial strategists took note, reassessing their assumptions about technological dominance versus combined biotic and Force capabilities. Political negotiations became increasingly delicate. Jedi Masters sought consensus between Mass Effect delegates, Republic officials, and local planetary representatives. Asari diplomats advocated for transparency and ethical engagement, emphasizing that secrecy or unilateral control could lead to mistrust and rebellion. Turians and Krogan focused on operational security and strategic positioning, ensuring that any display of strength would not be interpreted as provocation. The dialogue revealed philosophical tensions within the Mass Effect races themselves, highlighting the diversity of thought and morality that existed even among technologically advanced civilizations. Ahsoka mediated, often translating the ethical nuances of the Force into language understandable to alien delegates while respecting their cultural frameworks. The artifact's potential to influence both Force and biotic energy drew the attention of rogue Jedi factions and opportunistic mercenary groups. Small-scale infiltrations were attempted, probing defenses and testing energy interactions. Each incursion was repelled, though minor feedback surges reminded all participants that control over the artifact required both discipline and foresight. Ahsoka personally trained selected Mass Effect personnel in defensive techniques compatible with both biotic and Force energy, creating hybrid strategies that would later prove invaluable. This training emphasized situational awareness, teamwork, and ethical responsibility, reinforcing the theme that power without discipline could be catastrophic. As operations continued, subtle anomalies began to emerge. The artifact's energy occasionally rippled across vast distances, causing temporary distortions in hyperspace lanes and minor interference with hyperdrive systems. Clone pilots reported disorienting navigational feedback, while Jedi Masters noticed subtle shifts in Force currents around nearby star systems. The Mass Effect races adapted quickly, recalibrating biotic fields and shielding protocols to compensate. Still, the phenomenon demonstrated that even with extreme caution, the artifact's full potential remained unpredictable, reinforcing the importance of ethical and strategic oversight. This concluded with a precarious balance established. Jedi Masters, Mass Effect delegates, and cautious Republic officials had secured the artifact and begun to understand its capabilities, while Imperial forces and rogue elements remained poised to exploit any misstep. Ahsoka's leadership proved critical, guiding the integration of diverse skills, philosophies, and ethical frameworks into a coherent operational strategy. The stage was set for the next escalation, where moral dilemmas, political intrigue, and the unpredictable interaction between biotic and force energies would converge in increasingly complex ways, determining the fate of systems and the stability of galactic order. The fragile equilibrium established around the artifact began to strain under pressures that could no longer be contained by diplomacy alone. Reports flooded in from outer rim systems where Krogan exploratory groups had clashed with local militias, not out of malice, but from cultural misalignment and misunderstandings over territory and defense. What the Krogan considered necessary forward positioning was interpreted by local governments as invasion. Trade guilds lodged formal protests with the Republic, accusing the Jedi of allowing dangerous foreign powers to operate unchecked. At the same time, Asari diplomatic envoys worked tirelessly to de-escalate tensions, offering mediation and cultural exchange programs. But the sheer scale of galactic fear surrounding the newcomers made their efforts feel like drops in a widening storm. Within the Mass Effect coalition itself, unity began to fracture. Turian command councils questioned whether continued cooperation with the Jedi truly served their long-term security interests. They observed how quickly the Republic's bureaucracy slowed decision-making and how the Jedi's ethical constraints often delayed decisive action. Some Turian strategists argued that establishing fortified zones under joint Turian-Krogan protection would deter aggression and demonstrate strength, even if it risked provoking political backlash. Krogan leaders, emboldened by their successes in skirmishes against pirates and mercenary bands, pressed harder for autonomy, asserting that they had earned the right to carve out space for their people without endless negotiation. Salarian intelligence units, meanwhile, detected Imperial movements accelerating along key hyperspace corridors, suggesting that the Empire was preparing for a decisive play. Ahsoka felt the growing weight of consequence with every decision. She sensed the force tightening around these events, currents converging toward a future shaped not by inevitability, but by choice. Meetings grew longer, voices sharper, patience thinner. The Jedi Council cautioned restraint, warning that open confrontation with the Empire or unilateral action by the Mass Effect races could trigger galaxy-wide war. Yet restraint carried its own cost. Each delay allowed the Empire to gather intelligence, refine countermeasures against biotics, and spread propaganda painting the newcomers as existential threats. Civilians began to protest across Republic worlds, demanding protection from what they feared was an uncontrolled invasion masked as diplomacy. The moral dilemma crystallized when intelligence confirmed the Empire's intent to seize the artifact. A coordinated Imperial task force, including elite stormtrooper divisions and experimental energy suppression technology, was en route. Their objective was clear: capture the artifact, subjugate the Mass Effect races, and exploit biotic and force resonance to create a new class of Imperial weaponry. The Republic Senate was divided. Some senators urging appeasement to avoid war, others demanding preemptive action. The Jedi Council debated whether defending the artifact justified open conflict, aware that war with the Empire would cost countless lives. The Mass Effect races faced their own reckoning. Asari leaders argued that abandoning the artifact or surrendering it under threat would betray the principles that defined their civilization. Turians weighed tactical realities, calculating that even with combined fleets, a full Imperial assault could overwhelm them. Krogan warlords saw the impending confrontation as inevitable and honorable, insisting that meeting the Empire head-on was preferable to slow erosion under political compromise. Salarian analysts presented projections showing multiple branching outcomes, none without significant loss, but highlighting that inaction led almost certainly to Imperial dominance. Ahsoka proposed a path that satisfied no one completely, but offered a chance to avert catastrophe. Rather than surrendering the artifact or defending it through brute force, she suggested relocating it to a neutral zone beyond established hyperspace routes, guarded by a joint task force drawn from Jedi, Mass Effect races, and independent factions. The move would deny the Empire immediate access, while buying time to study the artifact's deeper nature and stabilize its energy output. It would also test whether true cooperation across cultures was possible under extreme pressure. The proposal sparked intense debate, accusations of naivety from some, recklessness from others, but ultimately emerged as the only option that avoided immediate war. Execution of the plan demanded precision and trust. Mass Effect engineers coordinated with Republic navigators to chart unconventional hyperspace paths, while Asari biotics synchronized with Jedi to stabilize energy fluctuations during transit. Krogan units volunteered to form the rear guard, fully aware they would bear the brunt of any Imperial pursuit. As preparations advanced, tensions ran high, but a sense of shared purpose began to emerge, forged not by ideology, but by necessity. The Empire struck sooner than expected. Imperial forces intercepted fragments of the relocation plan and launched an aggressive interdiction maneuver. Star destroyers emerged along projected routes, deploying energy-dampening fields designed to disrupt biotic constructs. The confrontation erupted into chaos. Biotic barriers flared against turbo-laser fire, while Jedi starfighters weaved through the battlefield, deflecting incoming blasts with force-guided precision. Krogan shock troops boarded Imperial vessels, engaging stormtroopers in brutal close-quarters combat that echoed through metal corridors. The clash demonstrated both the strengths and vulnerabilities of each side, neither achieving decisive dominance. Amid the conflict, the artifact reacted. Its energy surged in response to the convergence of force and biotic power, radiating waves that destabilized sensors and warped local spacetime. Pilots struggled to maintain control, and even seasoned Jedi felt the force fluctuate unpredictably. Ahsoka realized that the artifact was not merely a tool, but a catalyst, amplifying intent and emotion as much as raw power. The realization deepened the moral stakes. Using it as a weapon risked unleashing consequences beyond anyone's control. In a critical moment, Ahsoka chose to intervene directly. She entered the artifact's containment field alongside selected Asari biotics, guiding their focus away from aggression and toward balance. The effort demanded immense concentration, blending meditation, discipline, and trust across cultures. The artifact's energy stabilized, allowing the relocation to continue. The act did not end the battle, but it prevented catastrophic escalation, buying crucial time for Allied forces to withdraw. The aftermath left scars. Ships were damaged, lives lost, alliances strained but intact. The Empire retreated, recalibrating its strategy in light of unexpected resistance. The Mass Effect races emerged from the confrontation altered, their unity tested and reforged under fire. Jedi Masters acknowledged that the galaxy had entered a new era, one where familiar moral frameworks would be challenged by unprecedented intersections of power. As the artifact disappeared into its new hidden sanctuary, the question remained unresolved. Had they delayed the inevitable or reshaped destiny itself? The answer would depend on future choices, but one truth was undeniable. Neutrality was no longer possible. The Mass Effect races were now irrevocably woven into the fabric of the Star Wars galaxy, and the moral consequences of their presence would echo across systems for generations to come. The quiet after the retreat was deceptive. The relocation of the artifact had succeeded, but the galaxy had not exhaled. Instead, it held its breath. Imperial fleets repositioned along outer rim corridors, their movements subtle but unmistakable. Republic intelligence intercepted encrypted transmissions, hinting at contingency plans that went far beyond simple retrieval. The Empire had shifted its perspective. The Mass Effect races were no longer anomalies to be contained. They were variables that threatened the foundational balance of power. And variables in Imperial doctrine were meant to be eliminated or controlled absolutely. The hidden sanctuary chosen for the artifact lay within a region of space long considered unstable, where hyperspace routes fractured and real space bled with gravitational anomalies. It was a place avoided by smugglers and navies alike, a dead zone littered with the remnants of ancient conflicts and failed experiments. There, the combined task force established a defensive perimeter unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Turian fleets arranged overlapping firing arcs with Republic cruisers. Asari biotics maintained constant resonance fields to dampen sudden energy spikes. Jedi patrols moved silently through the void in small strike wings, relying on precognition rather than sensors. Krogan warships lingered at the edges, engines hot, crews restless, daring the Empire to try again. Within the sanctuary, tensions reached a breaking point of a different kind. Prolonged proximity to the artifact affected everyone differently. Jedi reported intensified visions, futures branching faster than they could interpret. Asari felt emotional resonance amplified to uncomfortable degrees, empathy bleeding into distraction. Krogan grew increasingly aggressive, their instincts sharpened and provoked by the artifact's underlying power. Salarian analysts observed these changes with growing alarm, identifying feedback loops between intent, emotion, and energy output. The artifact was not passive. It responded. It learned. Ahsoka recognized the danger before most were willing to name it. The artifact was no longer simply something to be guarded or studied. It was becoming a focal point for conflict, drawing ambition, fear, and desire into itself. Every faction present, no matter how disciplined, risked imprinting its own agenda onto the energy field. Left unchecked, the artifact could destabilize not just local space, but the philosophical boundaries that separated force from biotics, discipline from domination. Imperial action came not as a direct assault, but as fragmentation. Rather than concentrating their power, the Empire ignited multiple flashpoints across the region. Pirate groups received sudden access to advanced weaponry. Neutral systems were coerced into closing ports to mass effect vessels. False intelligence was leaked suggesting Krogan forces had massacred civilian populations. Each lie forced the coalition to divert resources, to defend reputations, to plug leaks in an increasingly porous alliance. The strategy was elegant in its cruelty, designed to make unity unsustainable. The breaking point arrived when a rogue Jedi cell attempted to seize the artifact. They believed the Council had grown weak, compromised by alien influence, and that the artifact represented a chance to restore what they saw as true balance. Their strike was swift and precise, bypassing outer defenses using force cloaking techniques unfamiliar to Mass Effect sensors. When alarms finally sounded, it was already too late for a clean resolution. The confrontation inside the sanctuary was chaos distilled. Jedi clashed with Jedi, lightsabers illuminating the chamber in violent arcs of color. Asari biotics intervened, erecting barriers not to attack, but to separate, to slow the spiral before it consumed everything. Krogan guards charged into the fray without hesitation, absorbing force-enhanced blows that would have felled lesser beings. The artifact reacted violently, energy surging in erratic pulses that bent gravity and tore at consciousness. Ahsoka entered the chamber knowing there would be no perfect outcome. She felt the Force screaming warnings, not of death, but of consequence. The rogue Jedi leader confronted her directly, accusing her of betraying the Order, of allowing the galaxy to be reshaped by outsiders who did not understand the Force. She answered not with rhetoric, but with resolve. The Force was not a possession to be hoarded. It was a responsibility to be shared wisely or not at all. Their duel was unlike any she had fought before. Biotic fields warped the flow of combat, altering trajectories mid-strike. The artifact amplified every movement, every intention, making restraint as dangerous as aggression. Ahsoka fought defensively not to win, but to endure long enough for the truth to become undeniable. The rogue Jedi struck at the artifact itself, attempting to bind it fully to the Force. The result was catastrophic. Energy erupted outward in a shock wave that rippled across the sanctuary and beyond. Ships were hurled off course. Hyperspace lanes collapsed temporarily. Those sensitive to the Force or biotics felt as though the galaxy itself had shuddered. In that moment, the artifact revealed its true nature. It was not aligned to the Force or to biotics. It was a bridge, ancient and impartial, capable of amplifying connection or annihilating distinction depending on how it was used. The rogue Jedi was consumed by the backlash, not destroyed, but stripped of connection, left alive and empty in a way that horrified everyone who witnessed it. The sight shattered any remaining illusions about control. Silence fell over the chamber, broken only by the low hum of the artifact as it stabilized under Ahsoka's guidance and the combined efforts of Asari biotics. The Empire chose that moment to strike openly. Star destroyers emerged at the edge of the region, accompanied by experimental vessels designed to harness the very energy fluctuations they had been studying. The final confrontation began not as a single battle, but as a cascade. Fleets collided. Boarding actions erupted. Biotic shockwaves tore through formations, while Jedi strike teams dismantled command bridges with surgical precision. The Empire's new technology proved effective but unstable, feeding back violently under sustained resistance. Krogan forces distinguished themselves brutally, tearing through Imperial lines and forcing retreats where none had been expected. Turians coordinated combined arms tactics that adapted in real time to Force-assisted maneuvers. Asari command units maintained cohesion across the battlefield, their calm presence anchoring chaos. The Republic Navy, stretched thin, fought with renewed purpose, no longer defending abstraction, but a fragile chance at coexistence. At the heart of it all, Ahsoka made the defining choice. Rather than using the artifact to turn the tide decisively, she ordered its energy dampened to the lowest sustainable level. Victory would be earned, not imposed. The decision cost lives. It prolonged the battle, but it prevented the artifact from becoming the ultimate weapon the Empire craved. When the fighting finally subsided, the cost was undeniable. Wreckage drifted through shattered space. Entire fleets were reduced to debris. Yet the Empire had been forced to withdraw, its losses severe enough to reconsider immediate further action. The coalition stood battered but unbroken, bound together not by victory, but by survival and shared restraint. The artifact remained, quieter now. Its presence diminished, but not gone. The galaxy had crossed a threshold. There would be no returning to ignorance, no pretending the Mass Effect races were a temporary anomaly. They had bled together with the galaxy's defenders, made choices that would echo long after the smoke cleared. What remained was the final question, one no battle could answer. Having proven they could fight together, could they now choose to live together without repeating the same mistakes that had nearly torn everything apart? The galaxy did not celebrate after the Empire's withdrawal. There were no sweeping declarations of victory, no triumphant holo-broadcasts filling the spaceways with hope. What followed instead was a heavy, complicated silence, the kind that settles after a truth too large to ignore has been revealed. Fleets limped back to dockyards. Wounded soldiers and biotics were treated side by side in makeshift medical bays. Jedi meditated longer than usual, troubled by visions that no longer aligned neatly with the futures they had once foreseen. The Mass Effect races, now irrevocably woven into the fabric of this galaxy, faced a reality far harsher than first contact optimism had promised. The artifact was sealed once more, but this time not hidden behind secrecy alone. A joint covenant was established, unprecedented in scope. Jedi representatives, Asari matriarchs, Turian Primarch envoys, Krogan clan leaders, Salarian intelligence overseers, and Republic officials all placed their authority into a shared mandate. The artifact would not be used, studied, or moved without unanimous consent. It was not trust that made this possible, but shared fear and shared responsibility. Everyone present understood that the artifact was not merely dangerous, it was transformative. Its continued existence demanded restraint on a scale the galaxy had rarely achieved. Ahsoka remained at the center of this fragile structure, though she never claimed leadership. She refused titles, councils, or permanent command, choosing instead to act as a stabilizing presence when tensions rose. her role became one of quiet arbitration, moving between factions, listening more than she spoke. To the Jedi, she represented a path outside rigid orthodoxy. To the Mass Effect races, she embodied the idea that power could exist without domination. To the Republic, she was proof that cooperation across fundamentally different civilizations was possible, even if imperfect. Integration proved far more difficult than survival. Krogan settlement requests ignited fierce debate across Outer Rim systems. Worlds scarred by past invasions resisted fiercely, while others, desperate for protection, welcomed Krogan defenders. Compromises were uneven and often fragile. Krogan clans were granted stewardship roles over uninhabited or lawless systems, bound by strict accords that limited expansion and required oversight. Some clans accepted the terms with honor. Others rejected them outright and disappeared into uncharted space, a reminder that not all consequences could be controlled. Asari communities integrated more seamlessly, establishing cultural and academic exchanges that reshaped philosophical discourse across the Republic. Jedi scholars studied Asari approaches to longevity, memory, and emotional discipline, finding unexpected parallels with Force traditions. Biotic academies emerged on neutral worlds, carefully regulated and monitored by both Jedi and Asari mentors. The question of whether biotics constituted a Force-adjacent phenomenon was never fully resolved, but the dialogue itself transformed how the Jedi understood the nature of power. Turian forces became a stabilizing military presence along volatile borders, their disciplined structure complementing Republic fleets stretched thin by decades of conflict. Their presence was not universally welcomed. Accusations of militarization and creeping occupation followed them wherever they went. Yet when pirate coalitions collapsed and hyperspace routes stabilized under Turian protection, even critics were forced to acknowledge the results. The galaxy began to adapt not because it was ready, but because resistance had become more costly than cooperation. Salarian influence remained largely unseen, but deeply felt. Intelligence networks expanded, quietly mapping Force anomalies, biotic resonance zones, and Imperial resurgence patterns. Their analyses reshaped strategic doctrine across multiple factions, introducing probability-based planning that clashed with the Jedi's reliance on intuition. Tensions flared repeatedly over information control, but the value of Salarian foresight proved undeniable. In many ways, they became the unseen architects of the new galactic balance. The Empire did not vanish. It retreated, recalibrated, and learned. Imperial doctrine shifted, placing renewed emphasis on adaptability and suppression of hybrid threats. Research into counterbiotic technology intensified, while Inquisitors were trained to recognize and exploit the subtle differences between Force and biotic manifestations. The Emperor did not see defeat in what had occurred. He saw opportunity. The galaxy had revealed new vulnerabilities, and time remained his greatest ally. For the Jedi Order, the consequences were deeply personal. The existence of powerful non-Force abilities forced a reckoning long avoided. If balance could be achieved without exclusive reliance on the Force, what did that mean for the Jedi's role as guardians of peace? Some embraced the challenge, pushing for reform, openness, and cooperation. Others retreated inward, clinging to tradition with renewed fervor. Fractures formed, ideological rather than violent, but no less dangerous in the long term. Ahsoka felt those fractures acutely. She did not belong fully to any side, and that isolation weighed on her more heavily now than ever before. Yet she also saw something fragile and extraordinary taking shape. The galaxy was learning, painfully and imperfectly, that coexistence required more than power or good intentions. It required humility. It required limits. It required the willingness to accept that no single philosophy, no matter how ancient or advanced, held all the answers. The artifact, dormant and silent, remained a constant reminder of that truth. It was no longer the center of galactic ambition, but it was never forgotten. Entire doctrines formed around the principle that some power existed not to be used, but to be respected. That idea alone marked a profound shift in galactic consciousness. In the end, the Mass Effect races did not conquer the Star Wars galaxy. nor were they absorbed into it. They changed it and were changed in return. Borders blurred. Assumptions shattered. The galaxy became more dangerous in some ways, more hopeful in others. History would not record a single turning point, no definitive moment of triumph or failure. Instead, it would remember this era as the beginning of something uncertain and irreversible. Ahsoka stood beneath unfamiliar stars, sensing futures still in motion, paths still unwritten. The Force flowed on, altered but unbroken, now sharing space with powers that did not diminish it, but challenged its monopoly on meaning. The galaxy would endure, not because it had solved its conflicts, but because it had learned to face them together. The arrival of the Mass Effect races reshaped the Star Wars galaxy in ways no war or prophecy ever had. Not through conquest, but through collision. Biotics and the Force did not cancel one another out. They exposed the limitations of absolute belief. Empires were challenged, not overthrown. Traditions were questioned, not destroyed. And in that tension, a new kind of balance began to emerge, fragile, imperfect, and deeply human. The galaxy moved forward without certainty, carrying scars from battles fought and choices made under impossible pressure. Some saw this era as the beginning of unity. Others feared it as the first step toward greater chaos. Both were right, because change, once unleashed, could never be neatly contained. Somewhere between the stars, the Force continued to bind all things, now sharing space with powers born beyond its reach. Whether this convergence would lead to harmony or catastrophe remained unresolved. But one truth endured. The galaxy was no longer alone, and it would never see itself the same way again.